Good evening, Tushita and online. So we can start our session. Today we will talk about the awakening mind, the mind of enlightenment. And before we do so, we will do a few minutes of shamatha practice, single-pointed meditation, calm abiding, so that we arrive here in the Gompa Tushita and we arrive in front of our screens at home, those who are following online. So I will quickly remind you of the instructions for shamatha practice. The first thing is to look at your body posture. The most important thing is for your body to be upright, ideally sitting on the floor in full lotus posture. That might be a bit difficult for you. You can sit cross-legged or Burmese style with one leg in front of the other. You can also sit in half lotus, but make sure you're not pushing yourself. If you're sitting on a chair, make sure you're not leaning towards the support of the chair, not leaning forward either. Make sure your spine is aligned, your shoulders are relaxed. Your hands in the concentration mudra with your right hand on top of the left, the thumbs slightly touching, and this rests at your lap. The shoulders are even and relaxed. The head is slightly tilted forward, aligned with the spine. The eyes are not completely closed. We leave them slightly open, but we are not paying attention to what our eye consciousness is apprehending. It is actually our mental consciousness that meditates. A tip of the ancient masters is for your tongue to be behind your upper teeth towards the upper palate. This reduces the production of saliva. The second thing is the focal point, the object of meditation. If you have an object that you're familiar with for this meditation, feel free to use that object. If you don't, what I would suggest is to visualize a tiny dot of white light between your nose and your upper lip. So in this area, very small, maybe 1 or 2 millimeters in diameter, and place all your attention there for the 5 minutes of meditation that we will do. If it helps you, you can also count your cycles of breathing. Breathing in, breathing out 1, breathing in, breathing out 2, and so on and so forth. The third instruction is to identify what we call the errors of meditation, to identify the 2 common mistakes. Throughout the meditation, you will lose your object either with excitement, the mind will wander, think about the past, the future, or your mind will fall into dullness, into laxity, lethargy, kind of mental sinking, kind of falling asleep. These are the 2 errors of meditation, so it is important to identify them. And the fourth and last instruction is to apply the antidotes, the remedies to these 2 errors, which are introspection and mindfulness. Introspection meaning a part of your mind should constantly be checking, am I meditating? Am I concentrated on my focal point, on my mental object? If not, if I notice that my mind has wandered, or my mind is sinking, then with mindfulness, I bring my mind back onto my object and try to remain there as long as I can. So we will try this for about 5 minutes. gently come out of the meditation. So today we will talk about Bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, which is a little bit weird for me to talk about if I look at my, my own mind. Bodhicitta is this very advanced, compassionate mind. And if I look, in my daily actions, most of what I do is, motivated by, selfish intention. But still, it is very beneficial to talk about this. So I'm just parroting basically whatever I have learned from qualified teachers, such as His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, Geshe Dorji Damdul, and Venerable Charles, who's a French monk who is constantly engaging in Nyungne practice. Maybe you've heard about this. Nyungne is a kind of fasting retreat. Like every other day, they are fasting, engaging in prostrations and all kinds of recitations. Who was actually, Lama Zopa Rinpoche used to call him Bodhisattva Charles. So this is mostly inspired by teachings I have received from these four teachers. And to start with, I would like to ask you, here it says that Bodhicitta is the most important, most beautiful, and most inspiring. I would like to ask you, why do you think Bodhicitta is most important? I think online you have the possibility to unmute yourself, and here at Tushita, feel free to. Why do you think Bodhicitta is most important? So Bodhicitta is this mind, it is this wish, this aspiration to become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings.
Because it helps you progress in a particular path, it gives you a sense of direction.
Anil here is saying it's important because it helps you progress on a particular path, it gives you a direction. So actually, Bodhicitta is based on compassion, or great compassion, which I think is a very important attitude, compassion, because once you have that, all the rest kind of unfolds, If you have the sense of compassion, then you will kind of push yourself, do what is necessary in order to help others, to alleviate their suffering. So one of the things we need to do to transform our mind is to develop a good concentration, shamatha, calm abiding. Because without that good concentration, we are actually not really, meditating. And for example, in order to realize bodhicitta and emptiness, we need this calm abiding. So motivated by compassion, we have the fuel, the energy to engage in those meditations. And then once we actually realize bodhicitta, once bodhicitta becomes our main mind, bodhicitta becomes uncontrived, like spontaneous for us, then we actually enter the Mahayana path, the Bodhisattva path, which is represented here. So it is actually the entry onto the Mahayana path. And with this motivation of bodhicitta, then our actions become, we constantly engage in virtue. We have all sentient beings in the back of our minds, and all our actions are motivated by this mind. And so we enter the path, and gradually we progress along the path. Geshe Dorji Damdul often says, gate, gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhiswaha, which are the 5 paths that you see here: path of accumulation, path of preparation, path of seeing, path of meditation, and path of no more learning. Here I have a quote from Kyabje Lama Rinpoche, who says, "When you practice the teachings of the sutras and tantras, the altruistic bodhicitta of aspiration and application is crucial because it lies at the very root of the Mahayana. Just to have this is enough, but without it, all is lost." So this highlights the importance of bodhicitta. Compassion and then bodhicitta is the fuel, that will make us able to do all the mind transformation that we need to do in order to become Buddhas and help others. Without this sense of bodhicitta, it is very difficult. We become, lazy or selfish, When I first heard about the teachings on bodhicitta, I thought, this mind is completely at the opposite of my attitude, so it must be very difficult, to realize it, to generate this sense, to transform my mind, to think about others instead of thinking about myself. And I asked actually Geshe Gyaltsen one more, who's a German nun. She's the first female Geshe in the history of Tibetan Buddhism. I told her that I thought it's too difficult. And she said, bodhicitta is actually not that difficult. Intellectually, it's quite easy to understand how to generate bodhicitta, what it is, what are the different steps, to meditate on bodhicitta. That we will actually see today. That is not difficult. What is difficult is that we need familiarity. We need, we need to be persistent. And she said, if you meditate on bodhicitta, twice a day, every morning, every evening, over the years, your mind transforms. And probably, after 20 years, you will get somewhere, 20 years or, depends how serious you are, you will get somewhere. Your mind will start transforming through the power of familiarization. And actually, Geshe Dorji Damdul says kind of the same thing, if you take the Wisdom of Emptiness, it's a subject that intellectually is very difficult to understand. The monks in South India, in the big monasteries, they study, for 15, 17, 20 years to understand emptiness, before to actually meditate on the actual emptiness. But bodhicitta, in a matter of hours or days, you can understand how to meditate on it, and then it's a matter of familiarization. Venerable Charles, the French monk, he says that it works through habituation. In the beginning, the aspiration is like reflection moving on a lake that is not stable, but it is up to us to meditate, to repeat it every day. He suggests also that when you find something inspiring, note it down, something inspiring about this mind of compassion, bodhicitta. When you find something inspiring, note it down and read it, before your practice. Read it again and again with your heart, and be humble actually to request the Buddhas for inspirations, more inspiration and blessings. And through habituation, he says, it will definitely come, never despair. through constant familiarization, for sure, the mind changes. So what we will look at today is there are two methods to meditate on bodhicitta. What we will look at today is the synthesized version of these two, the way Geshe Dorji Damdul presents it, which is in 13 steps. And of course, meditating on bodhicitta should be based on a sense of renunciation, recognizing that ourselves, we are trapped in this circling in samsara due to our karma and afflictions. Ourselves, we are going through experiences that we don't have control of. So we have to have this sense of compassion for ourselves first, this wish to be liberated. And only when we have this wish, then we can wish that for others as well. So here are the 13 steps. It is the synthesized version of the two methods. One method is called the sevenfold cause and effect method. And the other method is called equalizing and exchanging self for others. So here you can see I use different colors. Basically whatever is in blue is from the first method, and whatever is kind of pink is from the second method. And you can see that some steps, they have the two colors. So they are, used in both of the methods. So Geshe tells us that just knowing these steps, doesn't have much benefit. Of course, we need to know them, but why we need to know them is to practice them, to engage in those meditations every day. Usually what Geshe recommends is, during the weekdays, you can use one of the two methods that are shorter, they have 7 or 9 steps. And even in the metro, you can do these practices if you memorize the steps and meditate on them systematically. You can do that anywhere, So during the week, maybe, if you have busy schedule, then you can use these shorter methods. And on weekends, then when you have more time at home, then you can use these 13 steps, this combined method, which is more, takes more time. It's more elaborate. So when it comes to meditating on bodhicitta, the consistency is as important as the intensity. So we need to invoke these feelings of compassion and love, for example. But it is actually better, to meditate on bodhicitta for 2 minutes every day, rather, than to meditate on 3 hours. For 3 hours, you meditate very intensively on bodhicitta, and then you don't do anything the following days. The familiarity is most important, the consistency. So before we look at the steps individually, I will just read them. The first one is called equanimity. The second one is to remember that all beings have been my mother. The third one is to remember the kindness of my mothers. The fourth is the wish to repay this kindness. The fifth is equalizing self and others. Sixth is to contemplate the demerits of cherishing oneself. And the seventh is the opposite, is to contemplate the merits of cherishing others. The steps 8 and 9 is actually what we call tonglen in Tibetan, giving and taking. So step number 8 is the emphasis is on compassion. Visualize that we take the suffering of others with the emphasis on compassion. And the 9th step is the emphasis is on love, wishing others to be happy. So we visualize that we give with love. Step number 10 is the actual exchange of self for others. Step number 11 is the special recollection of the kindness of others. Step number 12 is the altruistic intention that leads to the final step, which is Bodhicitta. So if we look at the first step, Geshe-la says, if you want to build the beautiful castle of Bodhicitta, first you need to level the ground. You can't start to even build the foundation if the ground has hills of attachment and holes of aversion. Lama Yeshe used to say, if we reject only one sentient being, then it is impossible to generate bodhicitta, forget it. So the intention of equanimity, is to remember that all sentient beings want to experience happiness and all sentient beings want to avoid suffering. All the actions that sentient beings are doing are motivated by this same intention. So in that sense, all sentient beings are equal, their motivation is the same. So therefore, I should not discriminate between friends, enemies, and strangers. Another way to look at it is to consider past lives. As we have seen, 2 weeks ago, the mind is beginningless. We cannot find, a first life. In the past, we have been through countless lives. So we can consider that in all these lives, because there are countless sentient beings, all of them have equally benefited me and harmed me. So in that sense, also they are equal. And I should not discriminate, between friends, enemies, and strangers. So this is equanimity, the first step, to level the ground, to consider all sentient beings as equal, in order to, bring all of them to mind equally. The second step is remembering that all beings have been my mother. And Venerable Robina, she's a teacher in the FPMT from Australia, she says, it's actually very simple, it's mathematic, Since we had countless lives and there are sentient beings, it's only simple math to think that all beings have been my mother in the past. I had countless lives. In most of these lives, I had a mother, and since there are countless sentient beings, all of them must have been my mother at one point or the other. So usually this method, the sevenfold cause and effect method, which is based on rebirth, is more difficult, for Westerners because of this, we are not born with this concept of reincarnation. It's not part of our culture. But here in India, I guess, very much believe in reincarnation, and you don't need to, train your mind to go through logic and reasoning to actually, bring that to mind. So, because there are two methods, the Buddha was so skillful to give different means for people to transform their mind. If it's really too difficult for you, the concept of reincarnation, then better focus on the other method. Then if you have issues, with your mother in this life, the Buddha didn't confine this meditation only to the mother. You can relate to anyone who has genuine love and affection for you, such as your father, your brother, sister, your best friend, or, the person who took care of you as a baby, as a young child. And then if there's a specific person in your life that is maybe has been difficult with you, and you think it's impossible that this person has been my mother in the past. So let's take your enemy of this life, and you can imagine 200 lifetimes ago. Who was your mother in that life back then? We don't know. So logically speaking, we can say it is a possibility that this present enemy that you have in this life was your mother back then. Then you don't need to imagine how kind he has been to you. Look how kind he is with his own children in this life. In the same way, he and all sentient beings have been so kind to you in so many former lives. Then slowly your mind will open, towards that person. Instead of feeling anger, you start feeling compassion for that person. The third step is to remember the kindness of our mothers. So there are different ways to do this. Personally, I like to think of I have a mother who is very kind, so I like to think of her and the kindness that she gave me in this life. So I like to start with thinking, how difficult it must have been to carry me, in her womb for 9 months, and then going through the pain, of giving birth. And then as a young baby, again and again, waking up at night, to take care of me. And when I was crying, cleaning diapers, she was always concerned. I was the center of her universe as a baby. And then, later in life, she was always driving me to school, helping me with my homework, and so on and so forth. Then as a teenager, I was difficult, so she has to deal with that. And she, with so much kindness, she did that. And even as a young adult, she was constantly, taking care. So in that sense, we can think of the kindness of our own mother. If you're lucky like me and you have a very kind mother in this life. Otherwise, you can observe the kindness of mothers around you, or the person who took care of you as a young child. Another way to look at it, Lama Zopa Rinpoche would use this example. You can think that in many lives, for example, you have been born as a bird, as a baby bird, and you can imagine then, totally helpless, in the nest. As a baby bird, you are just born, you don't know anything, don't know how to do anything, don't know, how to feed yourself, how to, hunt for food, and so on and so forth. So you can imagine the kindness of your mother back then, leaving the nest and looking for, insects to feed you, and thereby accumulating, just in order to feed you, because of the love and compassion she has for you, she accumulated the karma of killing, those insects just to feed you. So in the future, you can imagine how she will, experience the results of this action of killing, which in essence is non-virtuous. So just due to her kindness. And an example that Geshe Damdul likes to give is, if you watch, for example, National Geographic Channel, you see, in the wild, those animals. For example, here I have a video of a zebra, a baby zebra that gets chased by a lioness. And the mother, without hesitation, she doesn't hesitate to put herself between the lioness and her child to save the life of the child. So in this video, she actually doesn't die, she successfully pushes the lioness away. But, there are many examples of, mother animals who sacrifice their life, who give away their life to save the life of their baby. And they do this without, any second thought. So we can watch this short video together. So you can see here this baby zebra is caught and the mother comes. And she, in this case, she successfully saved her baby.
Very rare video.
Sorry?
Very rare, unique video.
Unique video. So, these are just examples of the kindness our mothers have given us. Lama Zopa Rinpoche often reminded us, when we think of all sentient beings, there are countless sentient beings, And he often reminded us that it includes even the smallest, the tiniest ant, has been our mother and has been so kind to us in the past. So when we contemplate this, the next step that kind of naturally arises, they have been so kind to me, therefore I need to repay, this kindness. I remember when I first learned about Bodhicitta and I learned about this step, I thought, all sentient beings have been my mother, therefore equally I have been their mother in the past. So it means I have already also been kind to them, in that way, took care of them. But if we contemplate, in this life, we have all the freedoms, we have all the endowments of what we call a precious human rebirth, a precious human life. So there is much more we can do to repay the kindness with this life. We have this human life with all our faculties, with our senses. We live at a time where, the Buddha, in a world where the Buddha has appeared, the Buddha has taught, the teachings are still very much available. There are many followers and there are many people who are even supporting the followers. So we have now the capacity to transform our mind and to establish all sentient beings in a sustainable happiness, in a real happiness, a real state that is totally free from suffering. So it's not just about, taking care of them in a mundane sense. It's more than that, wishing them to be, completely happy. In that sense, we want to repay the kindness. So, yeah, you can think how much our mothers sacrificed. So we can think of these, these mother zebras, for example, who don't hesitate to sacrifice their lives to save their children. And you can contemplate that they are going through a lot of suffering and will suffer endlessly in the future. They are in the vicious prison of their own mind, the prison of samsara. So when we reflect like this, it should invoke a strong desire to repay their kindness up to the point of freeing them from all obscurations, from all suffering. The next step is equalizing self and others. So all sentient beings want to be happy and don't want to suffer. Just like myself, we all have the same common motivation behind all our actions. And, there is this sentence that is very common in Tibetan culture. I'm only one. Others are numberless, therefore it doesn't make sense that I consider myself most important and prioritize myself over others. Others are numberless. I'm only one person. So let us imagine, if we all together were going on a pilgrimage, let's say to Bihar, let's say to Vulture's Peak, where the Buddha, the historical Buddha, taught the perfection of wisdom. And imagine we are going there, let's say in the month of May, in the middle of summer. It's extremely hot, more than 45 degrees. It's unbearable. And it's a long walk, we are going up. We are a little bit far from everything. We are exhausted. And we forgot to bring water. It's so hot, we are so thirsty. And then let us say Kyabje is with us and he has one small bottle of water with him. And he offers the bottle of water. Who wants to, have a sip? Who wants to drink the water? So if we look honestly, our answer will be me, I'm thirsty. I will have the water. But it's so hot. I need this water. I'm so thirsty. I will die, of thirst and heat. So we have this naturally. And Geshe tells us, to think carefully here, because this mind, I will have the water, and we are a group of, let's say, 20 people in this heat, thirsty, exhausted. This thought, I will have the water, that naturally comes when Kyabje asks who wants it. This mind is actually the source, like the cause of all our problems. We didn't consider that others are equally, thirsty, and there is no logical argument why I should have it, and not others. Because I want to be happy, but all others in the group also. And we are equal, it's not that I'm more important than others. So it's not rational, to think like this. And, Geshe often says, the progression on the path, gate, gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhiswaha. When we have these kind of minds, thinking I'm more important, we are doing minus gate, going backwards. Arya Shantideva said that if you don't want to be burned, then remove your hand from the fire. And that fire is the self-centered attitude, this self-cherishing mind. When we are concerned about others, we feel some inner strength. It empowers us. Venerable Charles the Frank monk says, our mind functions by habituation. And since time immemorial, our mind is habituated to be driven by our ego, our self-centered attitude. So the self-centered attitude, this ego is very strong, but in fact, it is not that powerful because it doesn't exist inherently, It can be changed, it can be transformed. Lama Yeshe used to say that this attitude of self-cherishing is like a knife that we plant in our own heart. It's always uncomfortable and painful to have this attitude. So it's important to look at it and see how it makes us suffer. It makes us unable to solve our problems, makes us unable to open our hearts, and it causes, all our mental afflictions to go wild. Lama Yeshe also used to say that we should start by having a compassionate attitude towards this mind, this self-cherishing mind. The point is not to feel guilty, but to understand how this mind is suffering and how it causes us to suffer. So to look at it with a wish to heal, to cure it. Then we look around and we see, wow, there are countless sentient beings, and each and every one of them carries the same suffering. And yet they have the same wish to be happy and want to avoid suffering. So once we have, stabilized, equalized, trying not to feel more important than others, then we can look more in depth what are the demerits of cherishing oneself, of this self-centered attitude. So because of this self-cherishing mind, all my present problems that I'm experiencing are a result of it. I created negative karma due to it, and it will only continue to harm me in the future. So we can see how in the 3 times, this self-centered attitude is the source of all my problems. Venerable Charles says, when we are worried about ourselves, when people don't acknowledge us the way we want, when they don't respect us the way we want, or our partner isn't calling or isn't saying us, I love you, then we are worrying. We want to, feel loved and appreciated and so forth. So at that time, we don't even see the beauty around us. We are so, caught in this self-cherishing mind. We don't even notice the beauty of nature, of people around us and so forth. We are so concerned about ourselves that we are totally closed. Everything is gray. We have this feeling because cherishing ourselves is actually not our true nature. And you can see, in your daily experiences, when you're so concerned about yourself, you can feel that your chest is a bit tight, In the other hand, if you consider, the happiness of others, if you want to help others, you can see your mind expands, becomes more vast. Lama Zopa Rinpoche gives us some examples of the problems that this self-cherishing attitude gives us. In the present, for example, because of this mind, we easily blame others without, looking at our minds. We get angry very easily. We engage in conflict very easily. It gives us, stress, depression. This mind leads to a lot of attachment and dissatisfaction, jealousy, competitiveness, arrogance. Because of this self-cherishing mind, also we become lazy. We don't find the time to study and meditate. And even if we engage in good actions, these good actions are tainted by pride. So these are the demerits of the self-cherishing mind in the present. But if we look, even further, this self-cherishing mind is the one that, actually kept me locked in this prison of samsara for numberless lives since time immemorial. It's making me bear the suffering of the 6 realms again and again. This self-cherishing mind kept me in ignorance, because of this self-cherishing mind. I didn't engage in study and meditation. So still I have not realized emptiness. I have not started to, liberate myself, to eliminate the obscurations. Because of this self-cherishing mind, in the past I didn't create, enough merit. I didn't achieve realizations. I didn't understand the Dharma. Even this self-cherishing mind, it didn't even allow me to experience, mundane, temporary, worldly happiness. Even that, because of this mind, even temporary pleasures I'm not enjoying. And if we look in the future, self-cherishing, it has harmed me in the past, it's harming me now, and unless I put an end to it in the future, it will constantly harm me again. Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, it is my worst enemy and it prevents all my happiness. In fact, all the problems and suffering in this world, from the smallest conflict to the largest wars that we see now, they come, from this self-cherishing thought. So by analyzing in this way, it becomes clear that self-cherishing is something to be immediately abandoned. Now, on the other hand, if we look at the merits of cherishing others, the great bodhisattvas of the past, the Karmapa masters, they used to say, use the spear of ego to destroy the ego, because you experience happiness by cherishing others. Then cherish them, and later on, any thought of cherishing yourself will feel disgusting. So this starts from self-cherishing, because you see the benefit for yourself, that cherishing others actually helps you, then cherishing others becomes kind of your mission. I think we call it being wisely selfish, By helping others, I'm actually helping myself. So here it says the only way to experience happiness is to cherish others, because any pleasant feeling that we experience is the result of virtuous actions that we are doing. So when we think of helping others, benefiting others, we engage in virtue, And because of that, in the future, we will experience pleasant results. When we cherish others, also instantly we feel uplifted, we feel good, when we engage in actions that benefit others. But on the other hand, when we cherish ourselves, we feel so closed, so uptight. So basically, when we cherish others, we engage in virtue, and as a result of that, we experience happiness. At the bottom here, Venerable Charles says, without others, we are absolutely nothing. So this was step number 7. Now, if we look at step number, yes, Anil.
It says that you can cherish others, but cherishing yourself is something which is not the right action. One of the questions I had is that you need to be yourself happy to make others happy. So if I cherish myself in a positive way, not in a negative way, so I cherish my actions, whatever I'm able to do for others, so it gives me that sense of happiness, and at the same time, I cherish others to make others happy.
Yes.
So sometimes a balance between the two is important.
Yes.
Not always cherishing yourself is bad in a way. It could be also in a good way.
Yes, this is actually what we are saying here, not to do it wisely, take care of yourself. So if we do it, if we think only about ourselves with this self-centered attitude and thinking of our immediate, pleasure of ourselves alone, then we engage, in all sorts of negative actions. But if, this is what we are saying here, with a sense of, I want to be happy, I want to take care of myself, the wisest way and the most, successful way to do that is to take care of others. So, but indeed, until we are happy and liberated, we cannot help others perfectly, but still, we can engage in actions that help them, in the short term. We can engage in virtue that will help others. And by the way, we are helping ourselves when we help others. Yeah.
There's this concept of self-love, which is you love yourself in a way that you make your mind positive and you take care of your health and you take care of your physical health and mental health.
Yes, it's very important because
self-love is also sometimes very important.
Yes, self-love is very important, is what Anil is saying. And indeed, if you are not healthy, then there's no way we can help others, right? Yeah. So we need to take care of ourselves, absolutely. So now we'll look at steps number 8 and 9. Step number 8 is the first of this, taking and giving. So first we take the suffering of others. So we have this quote here by Lama Tsongkhapa, which says, "Swept away by the current of the 4 powerful rivers, tied by the tight bonds of karma, so hard to undo, caught in the iron net of self-grasping, completely enveloped by the total darkness of ignorance, endlessly reborn in cyclic existence, ceaselessly tormented by the 3 sufferings." So this is, Lama Tsongkhapa describes in which condition sentient beings are. So, the 4 powerful rivers here that are in the first line, it refers to, the 3 poisons of, attachment, anger, ignorance, as well as the wrong views, not considering, for example, the law of cause and effect, thinking I can engage in non-virtuous actions, it will not have an impact, these wrong views. So because of that, we suffer basically because of these 4 powerful rivers, as they are called here, countlessly. About this quote, Venerable Charles tells us, "Knowing this, how can I be angry when these beings harm me? They are burning in samsara. When we see this, the only thing we want to do is to dedicate our life to help them. Being sorry for their condition protects us from anger, jealousy, and other poisons. This is how compassion is the alchemy that can free us." The alchemy? Alchemy? How do you pronounce this word? Alchemy? Alchemy. So when we consider the condition of others, samsaric beings, we can transform our mind. And this transformation, can free us, can liberate us. When we see the suffering of others and we focus on that, then naturally we want, to help them. Otherwise, if people harm us, we see them as bad people and we become evil ourselves. We want to retaliate. So to generate compassion, it is good to, meditate on the suffering of others. Here I illustrated, a few examples that we can take. We can think of, for example, here we have a disabled child. We can think of the immense suffering that, disabled children are going through. You can think of also the suffering, of their parents and people, you can think about that. We can also contemplate the suffering that, for example, beggars in the streets are experiencing. You can imagine their lives, when it's very hot, when it's very cold, and how difficult it must be every day. We can think of animals. Here I have this example of, livestock. See how they are kept and trapped and cannot move just for, we can think also, chicken who are raised for KFC, how they are hundreds of them in small cages, and even their beaks are cut so that they don't hurt one another. Here we have the cows on the photo, who are artificially inseminated. Of course, this is in the West. I don't think this would happen in India. How they are artificially inseminated, and then once they give birth, their babies are taken from them. You can imagine the suffering, the pain, you just give birth and your baby is taken away from you. And you can imagine also the suffering of the babies themselves. And here you can see how they are paralyzed, in these metal bars, and machines are pumping the milk. And then when they start producing, less milk, then they're, on the market, they are not seen as profitable. So basically they are sent to the slaughterhouse. Of course, you can also think of the suffering of hungry ghosts and the sufferings that hell beings experience, which are even more intense. So it is good to contemplate that yourself and all sentient beings have experienced these sufferings, are experiencing these sufferings. It is good to contemplate that, in fact, these cows on the photo are, remember, they are your very own mothers from past lives. And Geshe-la says that when a feeling of pain arises in us, then we should, abide in that experience. It is difficult, when we contemplate the suffering of others. It gives us, it hurts to think about that. So Geshe-la says it's good to stay in that experience, in that pain. And personally, I think that this step, this step of compassion is the key to unfold, for all the rest to unfold. To, when you abide in that experience of thinking, of contemplating the suffering that mother sentient beings are going through, when this pain becomes so unbearable, giving rise to a thought, it's so unbearable, I'd rather experience that suffering myself than for all my mothers to experience that. I think this, with this energy, this attitude, this compassionate mind, I think all the rest can unfold. It can give us, the courage to do all the rest that is necessary to transform our minds and to actually benefit them by becoming Buddhas. So this step, is the first part of Tonglen, taking and giving. So what we can do here, contemplating compassion, is to visualize that we actually take the suffering of all beings and the causes of these sufferings. So what are the causes? Karma and afflictions. These are the cause of all the sufferings we are experiencing. And we can visualize that we visualize all sentient beings around us in their various states of existence. And we visualize that we take all their suffering and the causes of suffering in the form of, you can visualize black smoke, you can visualize snakes, scorpions, all kinds of, black things. And you offer that, all the suffering of others, you offer that to your self-cherishing mind at your heart. And Geshe says, if at that point you have some fear, that the snake or scorpion is going to bite you, then it's very good. It's a sign that you're hitting the right target, the self-cherishing mind, And when you do this visualization, you can symbolize your self-cherishing mind as like a rock, at your heart. And when you offer all these black smoke, snakes, scorpions, and so forth, all this suffering, you give it to your self-cherishing, you can visualize that this, rock kind of cannot take it and kind of explodes. And feel relief, that imagine that you're actually doing that you're actually taking the suffering of sentient beings and feel relieved. Now they are free from suffering. I've taken all their suffering and the causes of suffering away. Even the smallest ant, is now free from suffering. In the Avalokiteshvara Sutra, the Buddha says, the Bodhisattva doesn't follow many dharmas. The Bodhisattva holds one dharma well and realizes it well. The whole Buddha dharma will be in the hand of that person. What is that dharma? It is great compassion. It is said that one moment of genuine compassion has the power to purify billions of moments of self-cherishing. The power of compassion is something that we cannot conceive. In many stories of the past lives of the Buddha, it is emphasized how he sacrificed his body, his life for others. Lama Yeshe used to say that Bodhicitta means to accept being used by others. In the context of our present lives, it sounds, exaggerated. But actually it means, setting ourselves free, getting out of jail, removing the knife of self-cherishing mind that we are planting in our heart. In our daily life, if we make the choice to be used by others, then it becomes an unbelievable protection against self-cherishing. When beings go against what our ego wants, then there is no problem no more. How do you dare doing that to me, kind of attitude. So when we start paying interest to the life of others, when we think about their suffering, we actually reconnect with others. Our life becomes more peaceful, more interesting, and more joyful. Because from the heart, we want to be the source for the needs of others. When someone thirsty goes to a source, the source doesn't say no, it doesn't say, not you, you go away with your ugly face. What gives purpose and meaning to that source is the fact that all beings, they come and they drink from it. So this gives you an idea how you can meditate on this step of taking the suffering of others with the emphasis on compassion. And the next step is the opposite, is giving happiness and the causes of happiness with love, wishing others to be happy. So we can visualize that we give our body, virtues, possessions, and the causes of happiness. So why do sentient beings suffer? The cause of that is this self-centered attitude and this self-grasping ignorance, apprehending the self and phenomena as existing truly, inherently. Yes, I think maybe you can, if it's directly related. After, I think we'll have some time, but if you want to ask now, please ask here. So the cause of sentient being suffering is this self-centered attitude and this self-grasping ignorance, apprehending phenomena as being truly real, truly objective out there from their own side. So here in this step, we visualize that we give the remedies, the antidotes to these causes of suffering. So we can visualize in the form of white light, that we give to all sentient beings around us the remedies of Bodhicitta and the wisdom directly realizing emptiness, which are the two actual opposites of self-cherishing mind and self-grasping ignorance. So you can visualize that you're offering that in the form of white light, and imagine that now all sentient beings, are perfectly happy due to Bodhicitta and the wisdom of emptiness. They are totally liberated, totally, they are totally happy. They have this everlasting happiness now. So you can imagine that this is actually happening and feel relieved. Now they are endowed with happiness and you can rejoice. Such a good feeling, to have given them happiness in the causes of happiness. His Holiness the Dalai Lama says that things that are attractive for animals are not necessarily attractive for humans. And similarly, what is attractive to humans isn't necessarily attractive, to mundane gods. However, what is attractive for everyone in the 6 realms is love. Even the view of emptiness is not accepted by many, even among Buddhists, but love, altruism, and compassion is appreciated by all religious traditions. Even non-believers admire love. Even people who are consumed by anger, they will feel happy when we express love towards them. So here these steps are presented first, taking the suffering and then giving happiness. But Geshe tells us that this training in Tonglen can be done in the order that we prefer. Geshe prefers, first meditating on taking before giving, but actually the order doesn't really matter. So then we have the step number 10, which is the actual exchange of self for others. So Arya Shantideva tells us, whatever joy there is in the world, all comes from desiring others to be happy. And whatever suffering there is in this world, it all comes from desiring myself to be happy. So it is actually our decision, we contemplated the demerits of cherishing oneself, and we contemplated the merits of cherishing others. So this step is actually a decision. Since cherishing myself is only bringing about suffering, then I will stop, cherishing myself. And since cherishing others brings about happiness, then from now on, I make the decision, from now on I will engage in benefiting others, cherishing others. I will kind of exchange these two attitudes. Instead of cherishing myself, I will cherish others. And instead of not cherishing others, I will not cherish myself from no one. So this step is mainly, taking a decision to change my attitude. And then we have this step called the special recollection of the kindness of others. So it's about contemplating how everything we have, everything we know is due to the kindness of others. Venerable Charles says, without others, we are absolutely nothing. You can think, even just for one small piece of bread that we eat, something as simple as that, you can imagine how countless sentient beings have been involved, for us to have that piece of bread. From the farmer who sowed the seeds, harvested, then probably sent it to someone else to transform it, to refine it. And then, this flour being sent for us to buy. So the shops, the shopkeepers, all the people who are taking care, and, the person who buys it and transforms it into bread for us to buy. So many people involved for just one piece of bread. And this applies to everything, the smallest pleasures, the smallest enjoyments that we have. Countless sentient beings are involved, even the roof that we have above our head, you can imagine how many sentient beings have been involved for this to be there. Even the road, that leads here to Tushita, so many sentient beings. You can imagine even the workers in the heat, who have made those roads. So we can contemplate that everything is due to the kindness of others. And in fact, even everything we know, the very fact that we can speak and understand each other, somebody taught us. We often feel that we are not being loved, not taken care of. We have these thoughts. But if we contemplate, beings are constantly benefiting us. Right now, the food that we will eat next week is being harvested. Then it will be transported, bought, cooked, and so on and so forth. But the point is not to limit that understanding to our intellect, but to, move it to our heart with a daily meditation, to feel gratitude for others, instead of feeling angry and jealous of others. So our heart opens. And then later even, it can reach an extent that when others harm us, we will feel grateful, because at some point, in order to develop, patience, we kind of need this. If there are no objects of patience, we cannot practice patience. So even later, through familiarity in those meditations, when other harms us, we feel happy. Venerable Charles says, this gratitude allows us to remove this non-existing, border, this barrier that we have put between ourselves and others. We open our mind and our hearts and experience benevolence, kindness, and love. And the Geshe that teaches at Vajrayogini Institute in France, Geshe Loden, who was the Umze from Sarajay Monastery here in India, says that the happiness we have in this life, being human, having food, clothes, shelter, and any pleasure we experience, is due to the karma that we have created in the past. And that karma was produced in relation to others. So also in that way, beings are the source of all our happiness. One example that Geshe-la often uses, if you go, in the metro at night. Let's say, you take the metro here at 11 and there is no one in the train. Then we have this feeling, of kind of fear, I'm alone, anything could happen. But in the other hand, when the metro is crowded, somehow we feel protected, like all these people that are kind of, gods for free, they are protecting us. So, just by their mere presence, we can think how kind they are protecting us. So actually we cannot survive, without others. So how can we be angry at them? Especially when we contemplate, how they all have been our mothers and how kind they have been to us. People make us feel safe. If at some point in your life you go for a solitary retreat, let's say for 3 months, you go in a very remote area, let's say in the mountains, in the Himalayas, you live alone there, in a meditation house or something, then being completely alone for so long, after a while, just the mere sight of a person will bring you so much joy, you know. So then we move on to step number 12, which is altruism, the altruistic intention. So when we contemplate like this, we have this feeling that the suffering of others is so unbearable that I must do something. I must free them from suffering. Geshe says we have a moral responsibility to free our mothers from the vicious prison of samsaric suffering. But then we have to be very realistic, you know. I can't even take care of myself. I can't even liberate myself. I have all these, you know, obscurations. I have all these afflictions. So how can I, you know, liberate others? How can I free others from suffering if I cannot do it for myself alone? But if we look in the history of humanity, we can see that 2,500 years ago, you know, Prince Siddhartha showed the way, you know. He freed himself from all afflictive and cognitive obscurations and became known as the Buddha. And so how can the Buddha actually free others from suffering? It is by teaching the truth of suchness, the truth of emptiness. And so how can he teach? The Buddha has these three powers, you know, he has perfect love, perfect compassion, he has perfect knowledge, he's omniscient, and he has perfect power to manifest and do whatever is necessary for the welfare of others. There's an example that Geshe often uses, you know, let's say, you know, a young kid has a science homework and goes to his mother and asks the mother for help, and the mother says, you know, I cannot help you, I don't have the knowledge, I don't know anything about science. So she doesn't, you know, she has love, it's her kid, but she doesn't have the knowledge. So she says, you know, go to the neighbor is a scientist, and ask him. So the kid goes to the neighbor and asks for help for his science homework. And he's a scientist, he has the knowledge, but he says, you know, I don't have time. I have so much, my schedule is full, I cannot help you, sorry. So what he's lacking, he has the knowledge, but he doesn't have, you know, he doesn't have love for that kid to give him priority over his agenda. So then let's say the kid goes to the father who has studied science and has love. So he has the knowledge, he has the knowledge and he has love for his kid. But then let's say the father has a headache. So what he's lacking the power, you know, to actually help. But the Buddha, you know, constantly has this perfect love, perfect compassion, perfect power, perfect knowledge to help and benefit all sentient beings. So we all have the seed for this, you know, we all have Buddha nature, as we have contemplated 2 weeks ago. Now we need to cultivate that seed. This is the final, you know, healing for oneself and all sentient beings, to engage in those practices. So then the next step is Bodhicitta. May I become a Buddha to benefit all my dear mother sentient beings. This is what Bodhicitta actually is. And Kunu Lama Rinpoche used to say, this mind is immeasurable. It's as vast as the ocean and the sky. All Buddhas came from Bodhisattvas, and all Bodhisattvas, they all came from Bodhicitta. So it is up to us to decide to do whatever it takes to actualize this mind or not. Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche used to say that one of the aspects of conventionality is that through training, through the power of habituation, everything becomes possible, which means it is possible for every one of us to actualize this jewel that fulfills all wishes, yours and everybody's wishes. Geshe says that after we have generated this mind, this wish to become a Buddha, you know, then there is a commitment stanza from Arya Shantideva that we should recite after making this courageous commitment of bodhicittas, reciting this verse that just as all the Buddhas of the past have engaged in these practices, I also make the promise that I will do the same, because I cannot bear the suffering of sentient beings. So so it is good, to make this commitment. I will follow in your footsteps of the Buddhas. I will engage in those practices. I commit to become a Buddha myself and engage in the deeds of a bodhisattva. So this commitment, this engagement makes all Buddhas and bodhisattvas so happy. And they are actually always there to help us to achieve this. So the stronger the affection that is brought by this meditation, the stronger the commitment. And when you recite these words of commitment with, the words are flowing with their meaning, then, it can easily bring tears to your eyes. The mere presence of the mind of bodhicitta, can give you goosebumps and make you cry. When affection is felt, even the strongest person can't restrain from tears. This is the power of affection, the power of compassion. Geshe says it is the most beautiful mind that exists in the universe. Even if you have a glimpse of this mind during your meditation, then you are feeling so serene, so uplifted. So it can seem like, because it's totally the opposite of what we are used to. So it can feel that it's like giving up, sacrificing everything, giving up self-cherishing and only thinking of others. It has, this appearance, this facade, but in fact, you only get benefits. All, the useless thoughts that we have, they are transformed into precious gold due to this alchemy, this bodhicitta. And in the same way, our, mostly useless speech, we engage in gossiping and so forth. Our contaminated body, that falls sick and so forth. All this becomes transformed and become very valuable. They transform into the body, speech, and mind of a Buddha, a fully awakened being, due to this bodhicitta. A beautiful flower, attracts people. Likewise, a person who has bodhicitta attracts all beings. Even wild animals come around without fear. They are attracted by the warmth of this bodhicitta. You can see, the countless people who are going to Dharamsala just to have, the opportunity to see His Holiness the Dalai Lama. There was also this Geshe Lama Konchok from Tibet who immigrated to the border with Nepal in Tsum Valley. He was, living as a yogi in a cave for many years. And, people in the village, they thought even he was a yeti because he was just living in a cave by himself above the village. And animals, in winter, they would come inside his cave. They were not afraid of him because he had, this great mind of love and bodhicitta. But in our daily experience, you can see if we see a wild animal in the forest, they immediately run away, they are scared. So when you do this meditation, if you feel the slightest goosebumps, you feel that your mind is relaxing or your breath is cooling down, it's a sign that your practice is going in the right direction. The feeling has to be invoked. We cannot keep this meditation at an intellectual level. The idea is to meditate and move it to the heart. So with this bodhicitta, the seed, our Buddha nature is invoked, but we need to awaken it. And next week we'll actually contemplate how to do that, how to, bodhicitta is the entry, on the path. To progress along the path, we need to meditate on emptiness, the wisdom that realizes emptiness. This is what we will explore next week. So if you have questions, we have a few minutes. Please feel free to bring them.
I have one question when you said that I think it was point number 12 or 11, I forgot the point.
Yes.
Where you're talking about loving oneself is, they just show that point.
This one maybe, point number 10?
Before this, 10.
This one.
10. By giving 10.
10.
From regarding others, from regarding myself to be and can you come to 9, please? Reading with the so basically, my trying to understand that if you have to make others, if you feel happiness for others, then you basically are creating happiness. But if you are only concerned with your happiness, then you are creating sorrow. That's the way of Bodhicitta. My question was that if you don't love yourself, how can you make others love? Because you must first have a feeling of love within you.
Yes.
How can you make others understand love? You don't love yourself.
Yes. So this is the question here. How can we, love others if we don't love ourselves first?
These are, in my opinion, they're good, but they're also contradictory.
They seem contradictory.
I'm not talking about physical level, I'm talking about spiritual.
Spiritual level, yeah.
Where it comes from desire to be happy. What's wrong in making yourself happy?
So there's no wrong in wanting oneself to be happy. But that's what I was saying in the beginning. This meditation has to be based on renunciation. Renunciation is this wish for oneself to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. So without this wish, without wishing for ourselves to be happy, then indeed there is no way we can extend that wish to others. First, we must contemplate our own, state of existence. I myself am deluded by karma and afflictions, constantly engaging in non-virtuous actions, therefore creating negative karma and experiencing the results of these negative karmas in the forms of unpleasant feelings, unpleasant experiences and suffering. So I must first have compassion for myself, I must have this wish, I want to be free of that. And only by recognizing this, I can recognize that others are experiencing the same. So it is very healthy to have love for ourselves. But here what we are saying is that it must be a wise compassion and love towards ourselves. Because we have all these afflictions that make us feel, we have this self-cherishing mind. We feel we are the most important person, the center of the universe, basically. And this looks so solid. So we are actually seeking happiness for ourselves in the wrong places. The love that we have for ourselves actually makes us suffer. For example, due to attachment, we want something, so we might deceive others to get it. We might even hurt others to get it or steal it even. So we are just considering the short-term happiness that the object of our attachments are bringing us. But if we look at the long run, all the afflictions and actions that we engage to get this short-term happiness, in the long run, they make us suffer terribly. So this is why here in this meditation, it's saying, if you want happiness for yourself, help others. Because if you help others, you will engage in virtue. And as a result, you will collect the fruits of these positive actions. I don't know, online, if you also have questions, please feel free to ask. Normally, you should be able to unmute yourselves.
Nico, I've typed it out in the message box.
Oh, okay. Let me try and check. I cannot see right now. Just 1 second. Easier said than done. I don't know what love is. However, it has been a great learning experience. It's a pleasure. People are very nasty. I have not been able to let go of anger. Well, if you familiarize yourself with these steps, if you contemplate, how beings have been your mother, how beings have been so kind, if you have this recollection of the kindness of others, then gradually I think this anger will subside. And if you contemplate also how anger is actually harming you, makes you engage in actions that will result in suffering, then slowly, I think you can let go of that anger. His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, says that, in the beginning, due to love and compassion, we refrain from harming others. Then this will grow, and eventually we only think about benefiting others. And due to that, we will easily and quickly gain the tools to fulfill our intention to help others. And in the end, we become Buddhas, fully purified, fully realized. Buddhas whose great love constantly shines on all beings. This shows how compassion is essential, in the beginning, in the middle, and at the end. If you wish for real happiness, there is nothing more you could ask than for reflecting on Bodhicitta. Okay, we are running out of time, so we can dedicate the merits that we have accumulated in this session. We can read together on the screen this short dedication verse from Lama Tsongkhapa. From my 2 collections, vast as space that I have amassed from working with effort at this practice for a great length of time, may I become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose wisdom mind is blinded by ignorance. So we can dedicate the merits that we have accumulated in the 3 times, so that we may very soon, become fully awakened Buddhas in order to benefit countless sentient beings. And may this precious mind of Bodhicitta that has arisen in our hearts, not arisen in our hearts, may this mind arise and grow more and more, and whatever has already arisen, may it never decline. We can pray for the long and healthy lives of our teachers, in particular His Holiness the Dalai Lama. May His Holiness have a long and healthy life, and may all his wishes be instantly fulfilled. We can dedicate our merits for us to quickly find the reincarnation of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, so that Rinpoche may continue to guide us, his students, and continue to lead the organization. Due to our merits of the 3 times, may there be no wars. May all wars and conflicts around the world immediately cease. May there be no new wars. May there be no famine, no disease, epidemics. May there be no natural disasters. And may peace and happiness prevail in everyone's hearts and minds. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a beautiful evening.